Hello train friends, welcome back to the South Olympic branch for update number 71. So I'm working on the loading dock revision for the cold storage facility, and I've decided to make a bottom piece for it that won't be visible. That's about 9 HO scale feet deep and 21 inches long. So I'm going to make the building as it is currently is 19, but I've decided I'm going to make it longer. And then more on that later. I don't know how much later, but anyway, and then since I have to redo the building anyway, I decided I'm going to make it longer. And then I'm going to, then this will be the upper one, and it's going to be about 8 scale feet deep. And, but the same length. So I'm just kind of drawing and cutting these out of the styrene material and getting that ready to go. Those are the top and the bottom, and then I'll have to go through and make some of the sides for it. That'll be made out of other pieces cut of this stuff. Forgot to mention that I am drawing out the pieces on here, and I'm just going to go ahead and do the 12 millimeter risers. And yes, I am doing this partially in HO scale, partially in inches, and partially in millimeters. When it gets down to stuff like the height, I measured the building, and it looks like with the styrene and with the thickness of the styrene and such, I needed to be at about 12 millimeters, and it's just easier to figure that out in millimeters. I'm actually working towards kind of converting myself to using millimeters in a lot of cases because I'm tired of dealing with ridiculous fractions. Now I've got a piece that's ready, that's scored and ready to be broken into parts, and it's all the same length. So I'll have two 12 millimeter and one a little wider for the base at 9 scale feet, and then another one that's ready for the top at 8 scale feet. And I don't really, this will go for front and back. I'll probably need to cut another one for the sides. I probably should just went ahead and cut one for scrap for the ends. Building this loading dock for the cold storage place. There's, this is going to go on top when it gets done. So it'll be like that. And I'm thinking that I'm going to have an overhang on the building. So I'll punch some round holes in this at intervals I haven't figured out yet. And I'll have some round poles going down the end of it. And then I'll glue this piece to the top of it. And then this will go in front of the cold storage building between it and the tracks. I think it'll look cool. I got out this micromark hole punch, and I determined that this piece of styrene fits perfectly in that hole right there. I have marked 1/8 inch in at 7-inch intervals, except for at the ends, which I went 1/4 of an inch in. And the idea here is to put a hole to mount a vertical support for the overhang that will be above the loading dock. So I got to go down through punching holes in this. These are the rods for the punch. You put these in here and you hit them with a hammer. So when you're done punching, you've got a nice hole that will hold that rod right where you intend for it to be. It makes nice clean holes in the product there. Because I decided to make the building a little bit longer, I cut out a new foam core shell for it. That seems to be a little bit torqued, so it's not sitting quite right. I don't know whether that's the foam core flexed itself. It could be. That stuff is not always completely flat. Anyway, and so that might work pretty well, except for, of course, that flexing. So I'll have to figure out something. I may have to cut out a different piece. And then what I've done this time is change it so that the building itself has a different depth, since the area between the track and the backdrop is farther on the right-hand side than it is on the left. And that left the loading dock to be the same depth all the way across. I decided that the first building I built for the cold storage was too tall, and then I started constructing a second one, and I thought, or excuse me, it was too short. I started constructing a second one, and I thought, well, this is too tall. The second one was 100 millimeters. The first one was 90. So I'm going to compromise and go 95, and I'm going to try that. Now, for the end of this, and I got to give credit to a gentleman by the name of Greg Price, who turned me on to building, structures with foam core. But he kind of carves out the corner of the foam core board here, so that when you put your side piece on, when you put that on there, it just kind of sits behind that. And when you're looking at it, you're not looking at the end of the piece of the foam core. Sometimes he'll put linings on the outside of it and stuff, but for this, and what you do is, like, I've got a drawing here, and I'm just going to take my square. This is a Micromark thin beam square. I think I've talked about that before. Anyway, sorry, I'm kind of jerking the camera around here, but anyway, it's there, and then I take my utility knife that I got over here and gently cut it, and then I go along the edge of there. You can see how there's kind of a solid edge. That's the paper, and if you do it right, you can gently kind of cut that away, and then you end up with a piece that looks like this, and is the corner piece out of that. So for the second version of the cold storage building, I've measured out these, and they're about 35 millimeters high and about 35 or 36 millimeters across. And I've cut one of the holes out of the foam core here for that. And then I just put some blue tape on the back side to kind of stick it to hold it in place. Then I'm now in the process of cutting out, using my utility knife here to cut out the square for the other side, or for the other door. And I've already kind of checked this to see how it looks against the loading dock, and I think it's going to work there. So I just need to finish this one and test it out. A couple of things I wanted to make sure to mention. One is that I'm using a newer blade for this process, and two, when I start cutting into this stuff, I'll make a first cut to try to just get it through the top layer. Because if you try to push this all the way through on one shot for something like this, you're going to end up denting or overcutting something. So I cut it this way, and then I do a couple passes, same thing on the verticals, and then I'll turn this piece around and I'll cut it the other way so I can get all the way down, so that I can make a nice crisp corner. This comes out a little bit messy on the back side, but in this particular case, nobody is going to see that unless they're looking at the back side of the building, which, yeah, I don't plan on people having a reason to do that, except for, of course, in this video. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I think, let's see, other things I've got to do is take the doors off. I need to cut the door opening for the left side, and then I've also got to glue those things together and put some spray texture on this and then paint the whole thing. And it's probably going to be like an off-white like the previous version was. And then I don't know, I'm thinking about adding a door, maybe a double man door in the middle. Might be just fun to do that for extra detail. Well, this hole didn't come out quite as well as the other two did. So it's a little sloppy in there. Most of that is vertical. So I will maybe cut a piece of styrene and put a little threshold on the bottom of the door. I fiddled with this so much as I was gluing it together. I'll be lucky if it stays together, because you know how it is with glue, but I've got my angle plate sitting on it to kind of make it lay flat, and got some 90-degree brackets and clothespins to hold it down, hold it together. So I'll give that a little bit to dry, and then I'll test fit it once again on the lamp. All right, let's take a look at this in place. I think that fits pretty well. Now, let's put some doors on there. It's behind door number 1. All right. I like it. Now I just have to figure some supports for the roof that'll go over the dock besides the 4 poles that I've got there. And I also need to put in the door on the left. Okay, this thing isn't perfect. There's a couple of flaws. I didn't get it glued quite right over here, and it's slightly twisted, so it's lifting up on the left-hand side. But I think I'm going to go ahead and paint the exterior anyway. And then if it really bugs me at some point, I'll build this thing for a 3rd time. But I think it looks pretty darn cool the way it is. Except for, of course, I'm going to add a roof out here and glue this thing together. So, like I said, paint it, and we'll see what that looks like. Well, stuff happens. It got bumped as I painted it, fell over, of course, and so there's a spot there. But as I'm shooting for a rough texture, and that's why I used the textured paint in the first place, it might still be okay once I've actually painted the building. So we'll see what that looks like when it dries. And I'm foaming, maybe I should say, but sponging on this this warm white paint over the textured paint that I sprayed it with. And I got that gap seems to be showing up a little bit more. I might have to do something about that. Not sure what that will be yet. We'll see. Now we're sort of getting the idea. I keep waiting for that thing to fall down because it's actually just sitting there, leaned on the post and up against the building. It's not going to stay there. I'm sure it'll fall down any moment now. Got some 060 channel I glued to the underside of the canopy roof. And then I've got some 100 channel, 0.100, that I glued with Eileen's tacky glue to the side of the building. And the idea here is that when that glue dries, my 60 channel will drop into the 100 channel and give my roof some support. I decided to make my support posts for the canopy about 1.5 feet longer than they were. They were at 10.5 scale feet. And pretty happy with that. And you can see that the canopy's not actually like glued on there. It's just hanging on the railing I installed. Hey everybody, I got a new locomotive and well, I got an offer on this thing that I couldn't refuse. Mostly because I didn't want to refuse it. Anyway, it's a Scale Trains SD38-2 in the Frisco scheme, number 296. So let's take a look at this thing. Let me go ahead and put the box down here. And got the flyer with it. That's cool. Got the standard foam. Plastic shell here. All right. It's like, do I really need another Frisco locomotive? Well, no, I don't. But I really wanted to see how the SD38s looked, and so far they haven't made one in Burlington Northern, so I think that looks pretty good. It'll be interesting. Ooh, it's got a all-weather window already installed on the engineer side. Cool. Well, let's put this baby on the track and see what it sounds like. Okay, haven't programmed the road number, so let's select number 3. Done. I don't see or hear anything, but according to the book, it doesn't make any noise until you push the number 8. There we go. Listen to it start up for a second. You'll notice that there is a green class light there. According to the instructions, this is F5. And it doesn't call out the Frisco specific stuff, but let's see. It says that green is second section, white is extra train, red is pusher, and off is of course off. So we got white, green, red, and off. Turn off the headlights. On that minute bell. Good. How about 10? So interesting, you don't notice the light emanating from around the numbers on the number boards when you're not looking at it through the camera. Let's check the back side here. Okay. Flip quick and UT6D, and we're in reverse. Here's the Fremo module I was working on in episode 70, set up at the Puyallup Spring Fair. This was a new event for us, and it kind of stuck us in a bit of an out-of-the-way area, but we had a lot of room, and we had a big paperclip-shaped setup. It was pretty cool, and people seemed to love it. Here's my Walther's Burlington Northern F units coming the other way. Notice in the background of this shot that there's some scenery material sitting there. I was taking the opportunity to work on some of the scenery on this stretch while I watched trains like Andy's Sounder and Mike's Milwaukee cruise by. Nolan brought a couple of Canadian Pacific units and is actually pulling a train of my cars. And here comes Andrew's Santa Fe locomotive. As you can see, we've got a lot of fans of a lot of different railroads in our Fremo group. And here comes my Frisco SD38-2. Hey, we just left Puyallup and now we're back in Kent. This train's making good time. Whoops, that's actually different freight cars. Same locomotive though. So before I talked about taking out the switch that was here and removing the track that was going to be back here, started doing that. Of course, I've already drilled holes for feeder wires and all of that jazz. So I'm just gonna stuff some little pieces of foam in there. That one's not big enough. And stuff some little pieces of foam in there to plug the holes so that when I go to ballast and put ground foam down and all that jazz, it doesn't actually fall right through. And I actually took my X-Acto and trimmed a couple of these off after I'd stuffed them in there, but that one doesn't actually need to be that way. And I filled in more of the gap back here with some paper towels and Sculptamold after I put some cardboard underneath to help support it. And then, a couple episodes back, I had put in some pink foam insulation here, and I put some plaster cloth over the top of that, and I did some Sculptamold work on top of that, and then I painted it with a mixture of burnt umber and raw sienna, mostly burnt umber. So and I think that's looking a lot better. This is coming loose up here. I think I'm gonna have to glue that more to make it stick. And I think this section up here is coming along nicely, other than that area that's coming off. And I've continued installing more of the chooch wall. As I know that I said before, but it bears a little bit of repeating, the chooch wall comes out of the package in a color I'm not particularly fond of. So, and I think a gray one will look better. I found that painting it with the chalk paint, it's a little diluted, a little thinned out. Actually works pretty good. So I think next up for this area will be to try to complete the wall. I'm gonna have to order some more of that chooch stuff in order to do that. And then I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I started using the adhesive backing that comes with the chooch stuff. It looks like this out of the package, and doesn't stick to plywood very well. And so I kept having this stuff come loose unless I like put something up against it and let it set for like a day. I went back to using Eileen's tacky glue, or actually went to using Eileen's tacky glue, and this part right here was done with that. So actually all of this down here was done with that. So I think it came out pretty good. And I'll continue doing it that way from now on out. So I'm just trying to get as much done before the regional NMRA convention that's coming up in Tacoma from the 10th to the 13th of May. My layout is one of the 32 layouts on tour. And for those of you in the Puget Sound area or who are planning to travel, you should know that the cutoff date for registration for the convention is the 30th of April, which is just coming up in a couple of days here. I appreciate y'all for joining me for episode number 71. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and take care, be safe, have fun with your trains out there. I'll see you again soon, or you'll see me again soon, because I don't really see you. Anyway, take care. Bye.